Good evening everybody, and welcome to my regular Sunday night Heal and Thrive Live here on my business page. And I'm really excited obviously to welcome you to this evening. Maybe you're new, maybe you're joining me for the very first time. My name is Caroline Strawson and I'm a transformational divorce coach. Now, I've recently added the transformational part because I've recently been training in something called rapid transformational therapy, which is all about taking people back to scenes where they've got these negative beliefs and resetting them. So I kind of called myself now the transformational divorce coach because I really do believe that I can absolutely transform all of my clients. So those of you that are coming on to join me, good evening, and I'm really honoured to be with you here on this Sunday evening. The first thing I want to remind you, and you know I say it at the start of all of my Heal and Thrive Lives here on my business page, is that this is a public business page. So anything that you comment on here is viewable to the public. And I know, coming out of a narcissistic relationship myself, that obviously sometimes we want to keep things private for what our ex is watching or looking at, seeing what we are doing. So just be mindful that if you want to comment on here, it is all viewable to the public. I do also have a free and private divorce and breakup support group after narcissistic abuse. So if you're not in there and you would like to be in there, then please either pop me a message or comment below and let me know, and I can send you the link to join. We've got over 3,500 women in there now as well. You know, I do coach men as well, but the group on Facebook is just for women. Good evening, Serena. Great to have you here. So if you're watching live, then please do, if you can, say hello and where you're listening in from, because I get lots of people listening in from all over the world now. In fact, I've got clients from all over the world. So wherever you're listening in from, I'd love to know exactly, obviously, where you are listening in from. Also, if you're watching on the replay, I'd be really grateful if you could say hashtag replay, just again so I know who is watching live, who is obviously watching on the replay. So tonight's subject, now this is something I would say I get probably one of the most messages about, and that's about parenting if you are in a relationship or you've come out of a relationship with a narcissist. It is one of the most challenging parts because, particularly if you have children together, it doesn't just stop, does it, when you go through a divorce or you break up? You've still got all of those ongoing issues as well. So I have written down 7 top tips to help you obviously go through and positively parent as much as possible whilst you're doing all of this. And there's some great ideas here that you can implement. And again, if you've got any questions, please feel free either to ask me live and I will do my best to answer them, or indeed just pop me a message afterwards or come into my group and ask any questions as well. A lot of those in my group will probably know some of these things that I'm going to talk about because I do videos and tips in there on a regular basis as well. So the first one is, society tells us that we should co-parent. So if we're going through a divorce, we're going through a breakup, then we should be co-parenting, you know, cooperatively parenting together. This is an absolute impossibility with a narcissist. And this makes it so challenging for those when we come out of these relationships, when we have children, because society is telling us we should communicate, we should cooperate with the other parent, because that is what is best for the children. So we start to beat ourselves up. We start to try and communicate effectively. We start to try and see if we can actually have a co-parenting relationship with our ex-partner. But usually what happens in this is it is a form of control and manipulation that the narcissist can still use upon you, and it makes it really difficult. Your mental health starts to suffer. Remember, those of us that were in narcissistic relationships are usually codependent or empaths. We want to do the right thing. We have a real sense of values and very moralistic, and we want to do the right thing by our children. So we will keep trying to communicate, we will keep trying to co-parent, and this makes it really difficult for you with your mental health. So society is telling us you must co-parent, that is what is best for the children. So you keep trying, but the more you keep trying to effectively co-parent, the more that your mental health starts to decline as well. So I want you to now think of a phrase that we use within the narcissistic world, and that is something called parallel parenting. Now, the goal is still the same. The goal is still to positively parent your children. But co-parenting, by nature of it being co-parenting, means cooperate. You can't cooperate with somebody who isn't willing to cooperate with you. So what you must do is parallel parent. Now, how parallel parenting works is that both parents actively disengage from each other. Now, you may find the narcissist doesn't want to disengage from you because they want to keep controlling you. They want to obviously keep that manipulation going. But it takes two to allow that to keep happening. So you need to consciously disengage from that communication and everything else so that you can focus on your mental health and you can be laser focused on being the best parent you can without all of the added input from the narcissist making you feel like you're less of a parent, you're not this, you're not that, and that constant kind of putting you down, that constant abuse continues even after you've split up. So you have to take a stance with this. And parallel parent is both parents disengaging from each other, still with the same goal of parenting your children in the most positive way that you can, but it stops all the back and forth all of the time, because that's when your mental health starts to suffer. That's when then you can't parent as effectively as you possibly can. So don't call it co-parenting, it's parallel parenting. That's not to say it isn't best for the children. Think about it. What is best for the children? What is best for the children is to see two happy, well-balanced parents. Not bickering, not rowing, not back and forth, not putting them right in the middle of their divorce or breakup. So parallel parenting with a narcissistic situation is absolutely the best way for you to consciously, positively parent your children. So the second one, and this can be a really, really hard and challenging one. And again, if any of you can relate to this and be honest, maybe you've done this, maybe you've really, really striving hard not to do this, and that's to never badmouth your ex in front of your children. Now, I know how challenging this can be. You know, if they're coming at you back and forth and saying nasty things about you, going around, and we know that the narcissist will do this, it can be really, really hard not to badmouth the other parent in front of the children. Sometimes you might even do it subconsciously. This is something you really have to make a conscious effort not to do. I get it, you might be upset, you might be angry, and you need an outlet for that. Absolutely, I get it. But that outlet for those emotions is not via your children. Your children haven't divorced the other parent. Now, you may have your worries again about how they are parenting, but ultimately they still have their mother and they still have their father. And ultimately, it is not down to you to try and turn your children against them, however badly that they have treated you. I know sometimes a narcissist can be very controlling towards the children as well, but sometimes they're not. And what you have to do is not badmouth your ex in front of your children. Have an outlet somewhere else where you can rant, you can rage, and you can process all of the information, and you need to go through all of that, absolutely. But if you keep badmouthing your ex in front of your children, what you will find is your children will not speak to you. You won't find out anything, because all they will see is that you are getting angry, you are getting upset, which is okay to a point because they need to see your emotions. But if you're bad-mouthing your ex in that scenario, then all that is going to happen is that you are going to shut your children off from discussing things with you, because they will feel that every time they mention their mother or their father to you, you're just going to go off on one and you're going to bad-mouth them and all the things that he or she did to me. So you've really got to learn not to bad-mouth your ex. The third one, and I'm a massive believer of this as well, and again it can make it challenging sometimes, is that you don't lie to your children. Sometimes your children, however old they are, might come back from a visit with the other parent. They might be older children and your ex may be saying something to them. Do not lie to your children. Don't make excuses for them. You know, one of the phrases I will often say to my children, and I shared it in my group the other day, is that I will often say to my kids, I am not lying to my children about this, but I will say to them, that's a question you need to ask your dad. Because I'm not going to say, oh, well, maybe, you know, take for example yesterday. It was meant to be, my ex-husband was meant to come up and see the kids yesterday. And he messaged me on Friday to say that he was poorly and he wasn't going to be able to do that. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, and and I'm not going to spend any time arguing with him, because ultimately, what is the point? So when he emailed me to let me know he wasn't coming, I just said yes, that's fine. And obviously I told the kids. When they were asking me various questions about, is he doing something else, what's the matter with him, I don't know the answers to any of these. So I just say, that's a question you need to ask your dad. Because I'm not going to say, well, I'm sure he's this, I'm sure he's that, and everything else. That's not my place to say. My role is to empower my children to know how to deal with all of that as well, at an age appropriate level. But ultimately, I am never going to lie to my children about anything. And that might be hard with some of the hard questions that they ask. And you need to be very aware that there's the age appropriateness with obviously what you are saying with all of that as well. Hi Carol, hi Marta, nice to have you join me this evening. So be really, really mindful with all of that to make sure you're not lying to your children. So number 2 and 3 are really intertwined, aren't they? We don't slate our ex in front of the children, but we don't lie. There is a balance with all of that. So if you feel like your kids have asked you something, maybe your ex has cheated, for instance, and your children have asked you something, then again, if it's maybe about their new partner, you don't go into one, well, they did this, they did that, and calling them really rude names, okay? That isn't worth doing, because remember, we want to keep this door of communication open with our children. A very great answer is, that's a question you need to ask your dad about that. And again, if they go and ask their dad or their mum, whoever it is, and they tell them the truth or not the truth, then that is obviously their decision to do all of that. I can't control what my ex tells our children. All I can do is act as a great role model for my children and empower them to have the conversations as well. And again, I get if they're really, really young, you have to be mindful, but do not lie to your children. The moment your children feel like you are lying to them, it's very, very difficult to get that trust back as such, okay? So just be really, really careful. Don't badmouth them, but also don't lie for them either or make excuses. What you need to do, let's just say they don't turn up one day, for instance, and you don't know the reason why, and you've got your children, maybe they're young children, they're saying, where's mummy, where's daddy, or something like that. We don't lie for that. What we do is we be there whilst our children are processing those emotions, so that our children get to understand that yes, life will have ups and downs, but we're empowering our children to learn how to deal with that, with us being there to support them rather than trying to lie. And I know our natural instinct is to try and shield them as much as we can, which we can do to a point, but we don't want to lie to our children, and we don't want to badmouth our ex in the process. And they're two challenging things to do, but I can absolutely promise you it will be the best for your relationship with them as well, and also help with the relationship with your ex-partner. However much you might think you don't want to do that, but it really, really does. Evening, Andrea. Hope you're well. So the 4th one, control what you can, not what you can't. This is a biggie for me. And again, maybe you can relate to this. When I split up from my ex, what I wanted to do was control how he was parenting my 2 children, because I really felt like, that my kids were now from a broken home, and we both had to make sure that we were the best parents possible to them, even though we weren't together, because our children deserve the best. They deserve to have the best possible parents, and I believe that hadn't changed as such. But when they were going to stay with him and they'd come back crying, they'd go crying, they'd be saying this had happened and that had happened. And I found it incredibly hard, because what I wanted to do all the time was to message and say, the kids have come back saying this, they're really upset, don't do this with them, can you not try doing this, you need to say this, you need to say that, because I felt I knew what was best for the children. Now, I may well have known what was best for them, but the more I tried to control what was happening when they were with my ex-husband, the more the control and the manipulation and the back and forth messages, which then meant my mental health was spiraling, which meant I couldn't be the best mum possible to my children. So what can you control? So here's a mark. I wish my ex would contact the children. I'm heartbroken for them, but I can never say anything negative about him, because it's already hard enough without me bad-mouthing him. And you know what, Amal, hats off to you for that, because that is incredibly hard. But what I would say is, How lucky are your children that they have you? And what your children are going to learn through all of this is resilience, that sometimes people behave in not the way we wish that they would behave. And you know what? We pick ourselves up and we move forward. And you're going to be able to show your children that it isn't obviously exactly that you would have liked for your children, but you can make the best of that situation and teach them so much from it as well. So what I would advise you is, you can't control what happens when your children are with your ex-partner. Now, obviously, if there are any safeguarding issues here that you feel are really not right, then you absolutely need to take the necessary actions. But if we're just talking about things like they're eating rubbish food all the time, they're sitting up late watching TV, maybe that they are leaving them with a grandparent, all of these things aren't really what you can control. And again, is it going to harm your children in the long run if they eat sweets, or if they have rubbish food for a couple of days, or they watch TV, or they go to bed late? And I think this is where you've got to really recognise what you can control and what you can't. You can't control what happens when your children are with your ex-partner. The more you try and control that, I promise you, the more you will get abuse back. What you can control is you and the environment that you are in control of where your children are. So for instance, if you know your children get really upset before they go and they get upset when they come back, we can't control the bit in between when they are with your ex-partner. So what we have control over is, how do we then transition and make it as easy a handover as possible for our children? What do we do? If they're really young, lots of distraction techniques, colouring, lots of things that we can do to distract our children in the build-up, obviously, to them being picked up. When they come back, it's allowing them to have a voice, it's allowing them to tell you about it, maybe get a hot chocolate ready, their favourite TV programme, so they can tell you what they've done. And if they are obviously feeling upset and all of the emotion, we need them to process all of that. Cuddles, that they know that they're home, that obviously they can have something with you, hot chocolate, read together, cuddles, all of that. And then what you can do is move the subject on. Don't give it loads of airtime. And this again is, we don't quiz them, which is one of the ones that I was going to say. We don't quiz our children. What have you been up to? What did you do? Where did you go? Who was with you? That's a lot of pressure on your children. If you allow them the space just to tell you when they come in, and then you kind of move it on, I guarantee it, they will feel safe that they can talk about what's happened then when they go and see their mum or dad, because they know that you're not going to then start bad-mouthing them, or you're not going to start quizzing them, or you're not going to start feeling upset or angry or anything as well. So here's Andy. I used to have a routine when they got home: bath, massages and reading a book. Always grounded them back into being home with me. Absolutely perfect. And that highlights it beautifully as well. Kids love routine, they love structure, and sometimes when they're going to one parent and coming back, they can feel a little bit out of kilter. And this is a process for you. If you've been somebody that you have been kind of, bad mouthing a little bit, maybe you've been trying to control a little bit, maybe you've been trying to kind of hide things, then use today now as moving forward with this. And it might take a little bit of time, and you may still find that your kids might get a bit upset, they might get a bit upset when they're coming back. But I guarantee it, if you work on yourself, and you are also then being calm and you're not quizzing them, they will feel better about going as well. So all around, so you have control over this, okay? Sometimes we very much put down how our children are with our ex. If they did this, if they did that, the kids would be better. But I urge you, take a look at how you are being as well, because sometimes we can really contribute to this situation and make it worse as well. So Serena, does it not show lack of interest by not just asking once? Oh, absolutely, Serena. That's why I said you can give them a voice when they come home. Hi, did you have a good time? And obviously allow them to say what they need to say. But as they're saying it and you're thinking, oh my God, he shouldn't have done that, or she shouldn't have done this, we don't then say, well, who was there? What did you do? Who else was there? Where did you go? Where did you sleep? What time did you go to bed? What did you eat? We don't ask this list of questions to them. Yes, we want to know, did you have a really nice time? Hopefully they're going to say yes, but equally they may say, no, I didn't. And if they say, no, I didn't, you say, oh, why? That's a shame. What happened? And just say it like that. But then don't quiz them too much. Remember, children at various ages only have an attention span of a certain amount of time. So if you want to sit there for the next 30, 40, 50 minutes, really kind of talking to them about it, they're going to lose interest and they're going to really start to feel it was even more of a situation than actually we want it to be. We absolutely want to hear them, let them have a voice, but we don't want to give it loads and loads of airtime in that moment, because we want to allow them to then tell you these things over the next day or so, which they absolutely will. As well, and drawing is another really, really good way of getting children to tell you what's going on in their brain, because of the colours they use, because of how they draw, what they draw, and everything as well. And that's a really, really good way of helping your children process all of that too. So the fifth one, and I've kind of touched upon it a little bit as well earlier on in the live, and that is to empower your children to cope and build resilience. Now, the reason, again, why I say that is because our natural instinct, particularly as a mum or a dad with our kids, is to scoop them up and protect them and make sure that they don't have to deal with anything sad or negative. And that's a natural instinct in us that we just want to protect. But actually, again, I want to challenge that for you, because, again, it depends on their age and we want it to be age appropriate too. But empowering your children to feel angry, to feel upset, to process these emotions so they build up their own coping strategies and resilience is going to absolutely stand them in the best possible stead. And I'll give you an example of this. So my daughter, she's 11 now, she had an incident at school about a week ago now. And, you know, it was just an incident on the playing field, and she got a bit upset because one of the girls was saying something about her, something that wasn't really true. And of course, she was processing these emotions, she got upset about it. So we had a chat and I was talking to her about what was the intention of this girl for being like this, and we kind of talked it through. And I cannot even begin to tell you how proud I was of how my daughter handled that, because especially those of you who've got daughters, you know girls can be a little bit mean now and again, but the language she used and what she was saying, I was absolutely blown away. I was so proud of her, but it made me realise that actually she'd had ups and downs in her life already, with me and her dad splitting up and seeing obviously everything we went through and the back and forth with mum and dad. But I then made, from when I realised that I was probably contributing to making the situation worse at the start, I needed to stop bad-mouthing him, I needed to stop quizzing them, I needed to stop lying, I needed to do all the things that I felt I was doing the right thing, but actually I was making the situation worse. So I couldn't change what he was going to do or anything. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to empower both of my children, my son and my daughter, to, if they felt sad, was allowing them the space to feel sad, so that then I could help and teach them coping strategies for that. Because let's face it, in life they're going to feel sad, they're going to feel angry, and I want to be there at this age so that they know how to deal with all of that as well. So Marta, I wanted to show you pictures my daughter drew when she was 8 and my ex was fighting badly with me, but I can't post them here. Wow. I mean, again, how interesting it is. It's pictures, isn't it, Marta? Because sometimes kids feel like they can draw much better than actually verbally say what they are feeling at the time. And I know a lot of social workers will use drawings and that, and when they're chatting to the kids, they will ask them, you know, draw me a picture of your family, things like that. And it's very, very telling with what they do. So I want you to think about your role is to empower them. If they're feeling sad, allow them to feel sad, but be there and show them that, you know what, this is just the moment. It's okay to feel like this, because I understand why you would feel like this, but tomorrow's another day. So you're showing them that yes, bad things happen. Yes, we feel upset. Yes, we feel angry, but you're helping them learn how to process their emotions. How many people do we see at 15, 16, in their 20s and 30s, really struggling to process emotion because they're not taught how to process their emotions? You know, we're always trying to just take it all away from our kids. And that's okay to a point, but when my kids are sad or angry or even happy or any of these emotions, I want them to learn how to feel them, and I want them to learn how to deal with them. But I can be there right by their side, guiding them through all of this as well. So if they're upset, letting them have a good cry, because it's okay to cry, it's okay to let out those emotions, and then it's talking about it and communicating with each other about those feelings, so then they can start to see that they start to feel better again. That for me is such a valuable life lesson. And when I started to reframe actually that, I thought, my God, my kids are from a broken home and all of this, and their childhood is now marred and they're not going to have the best childhood that I wanted my children to have. I just needed to reframe that. They've got a different childhood from obviously what I envisaged when I started out, when I got married to my ex-husband. But that doesn't mean it is worse. Absolutely not. They are learning different things: resilience, coping strategies, kindness, patience. All of these things are real values and attributes that they are learning through me and their dad going through all of that, which is going to stand them in amazing stead. If you've got older children as well who are really struggling, they need to process these emotions as well. Just because they're an adult doesn't mean to say that they aren't really upset about mum and dad breaking up or anything. So it's again allowing them a space where they feel they can talk to you without you bad-mouthing their dad or mum, without you obviously lying about it. They need to know at least one parent is going to tell them the truth all of the time, because you're their anchor, you're their foundation in all of this too. So number 6, big one, particularly if you've got young children as well, and that's to reassure them that this is not their fault. So many children, you speak to a lot of adult children whose parents got divorced when they were younger, they think it is their fault. They think if they'd behaved a certain way, then maybe their mum and dad would have stayed together. And this is really, really important that we make sure that our children know it was absolutely not their fault. And the difference between mum and dad love, or mum and mum love, or dad and dad love is very, very different to parent and son and daughter love. And children need to know that. It's so important that your children need to know that just because mummy doesn't love daddy anymore does not mean that mummy doesn't love you. It's a different kind of love. And you've got to explain to them that. There's some great books on Amazon as well. I often recommend to people in my group or my clients, particularly again if they've got younger children. There's books like Mum and Dad Glue. There are books on there that you can read with your children. And again, what this will do is allow them to process it, for them to realise they're not the only ones in the world going through this, or millions of other children go through this. They cope and it's okay. And again, just because mummy and daddy don't get on doesn't mean mummy or daddy don't love you. And it's really important for you to verbalise this. Your children need to hear this. It isn't just a case of trying to show them. You need to tell them as well, because as children, this is where our belief systems are formed. And again, I see many clients where they're in adulthood with all of these belief systems that went into their subconscious when they were children, maybe when their parents broke up, which is then carried through as a blueprint into their adult life. And that really, really forms of relationships that they have as well, because they feel like they were at fault, they weren't good enough. And I see this a lot, and this is why I do my RTT and my coaching, because I need to go back and obviously reset those belief systems as well. So it's really important that whatever your age your kids are, they need to know it wasn't their fault, it wasn't anything to do with them. Just because mummy and daddy aren't together anymore doesn't mean they don't love you. We don't badmouth, we don't obviously lie. Your children need to know that at least you are in control of how you parent. And it was really important for me to realise that my kids needed to have at least one loving, stable, secure parent who wasn't going to lie and who wasn't going to badmouth the other parent too. However much my ex might think I do, I know I don't. They may say that you do. Again, they might go down the old parental alienation syndrome route as well, because sometimes your kids make their decisions as well, and they might throw things at you and say, you're saying this, you're trying to do this, and that can be challenging hearing all of that. But stay true to yourself, follow these guidelines, and you can be the best parent you can, disengaging from the other one. And then the last one, number 7, and this is a massive one that might surprise you, because we've been talking about children through all of this and how we can positively and consciously be the best parent we can to our children. That's to show your children. How you feel about you, hi Marcy, how you feel about you is going to be the biggest gift you can give your children. Because if they see you building your happiness up, showing self-love to yourself, raising your self-esteem, respecting yourself, building your life, watching how you communicate, how you don't badmouth, how you process your emotions, how you maybe cry, how you maybe get angry, but then you're showing them that you come out the other side. That's the best gift that you can give your children, because they are going to be looking at you. You are their role model, you are their mirror. And I guarantee it, if you follow all of these and you do all of that, so you put yourself first, because you can be the best parent then. You know, and if you think about the aeroplane analogy, they say put your oxygen mask on first, because when you do that, you can help others. So if you find you're putting your kids first, you're trying to communicate with your ex and you're feeling exhausted all of the time, you can't be the best parent possible doing that. But if you put yourself first, you mind how you're communicating, you can be the most amazing parent to your children, and they will see that. So if you're worried about the effect your ex, who is a narcissist, is having on your children, how are they going to manage as they get older? Then you have to reframe that you are going to be the best way to teach them how to deal with a narcissist. And that isn't back and forth messaging. That isn't trying to communicate ineffectually with them, because all that is going to do is downward spiral your mental health, because you will know that. Because the majority of people coming out of a relationship with a narcissist will be suffering with CPTSD or PTSD as well. So what we want to do is show our children. So if you feel like you're putting your kids first and you're trying to communicate with your ex and you're feeling exhausted, you need to flip it. You need to now focus on yourself. Your kids will be watching you as well, and you will find, I guarantee it, everything will start to calm down more. You may find that your children will go without crying and come back without crying, because if you are quizzing them, if you are being anxious yourself, if you are getting little digs in, if you are bad mouthing, they want to please you. You as the parent, your children, when they are with you, they want to please you. So if they know that you really don't like their mum or their dad, they're not going to be saying, oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing mum or dad, because they're going to think it's really going to upset you. Now this can be really hard for people to hear, because sometimes we kind of think, because of how we feel, we want our kids to feel the same way. And we're kind of at this crossroads in our brain. Half of us really wants our kids to hate our ex because we might, and what they did and everything else. But the other half wants our children to have a parent who loves them, and to be able to parent effectively both of you, because you know really that is what is best for your children. And I see this a lot, where one of the parents, the non-narcissist parent, actually is equally as controlling when it comes to parenting the children, because what they are trying to do is, unbeknowingly sometimes, they badmouth the parent to the kids just want to please mum or dad, so then they don't want to go. We must cry, we must look like we don't want to go. And then when they go, they feel like they're in the middle with the other parent, so then when they come back, all of this stress, it gets too much for them and they get really upset. You need to be the one that takes a step back. Remember, we can't control what your ex does, but if you follow all of these steps, you can really raise how your kids feel about themselves. You can encourage them to, see the other parent as well, however much you might feel like that. My kids now, they've got a relationship with their dad. They don't see him very regularly and they don't stay overnight, and that was their decision, and that was entirely up to them. But ultimately, they have a good relationship with him. That's not my place to try and ruin it. It's not my place, to badmouth him. It's not my place to try and control what he does with them. I can control my environment. I can control how amazing my children are, how good I can make them feel, how I can be the role model to them. So when they look at me, they know what it is like to show self-love, self-respect, self-esteem, self-confidence. I am their role model for that. That's what I have control over, not trying to make him behave in a certain way, because I can't do that. I spent a long time trying to do that and it really doesn't work. Take my word for it. So I want you to think, whatever the age of your children, just think about these 7 top tips. So I'll run through them with you again. You can't co-parent, you have to parallel parent. Disengage. This is why no contact or extreme modified contact is really, really important. Never badmouth your ex, however hard this can be, okay? Once they're in bed or anything else, you know, if you're in my group and you want to badmouth, then just get it all out. I do an FU Friday every week, purely for this type of reason, because you need to process it too. And I get that, you know, you've got to let it out as well and feel it and process it. Because then at some stage, the more you keep doing that and you get that level of understanding, what happens is it really doesn't matter. You know, I have no emotion about my ex-husband now. You know, not happiness, not sadness, not anything, you know, because I have processed all of this. So whilst you are still processing it, I get it, you need an outlet for it, but that outlet is absolutely not towards your children. Don't lie to your kids. It's really important that your children know that they at least have one parent who is always going to tell them the truth. They need to know that they've got one anchor, one foundation, you know, so that they know that they can always come to you and you are going to tell them the truth. And remember, the great phrase that I always use to my children a lot is, that's a question you need to ask your dad. And it's a great one, because in that answer, it says 1,000 things. It means that I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to make excuses, but you need to speak to your dad about that as well. Also, remember to control what you can, not what you can't. You can't control what they do with the kids, again, as long as there's no safeguarding issues for you to take it further. But ultimately, what you have to remember is your control comes, you can control yourself, you can control the environment, when they go, when they come back. Those are the bits that you need to work on, not the bits when your kids are with your ex-partner, because you can't do that. Let's have a look. Great tips, but the narcissist behaviour is now being used on our children. Any tips on how to handle this? Okay, so great question. And also a little bit about what I've been saying. They need to look to you to know how to handle the narcissist. The more they see you either do no contact, not react, work on yourself, you're empowering them to do all of that. So if they're coming back and they're kind of saying that what some of the stuff they're saying, you can then kind of say, okay, well, mummy wouldn't do it like that. You know, maybe you need to speak to your dad about that as well. So you're encouraging them. You're kind of saying, I wouldn't do that. But you're not necessarily bad-mouthing your ex-partner or anything, but you're equally encouraging and empowering your children to know how to deal with it. You need to be, Andy, the kind of opposite end of the spectrum. So yes, your kids are going to be in an environment that sometimes you are not going to like with a narcissist, and it is challenging, and I'm not underestimating that. But the more you can practice self-love, showing them what it is like to be truly happy, healthy relationships, they're going to see those two opposing ends of the spectrum. They're going to realise what is healthy and what isn't. So really, again, it all boils down to how you are empowering them watching you, because then they're going to see the best way of how to handle a narcissist with all of that, because they'll see you doing it effectively, and that's really, really important. So, Serena, at the beginning of starting the road of kids staying at their dad's, do we have to pretend to be strong, or is it, it's absolutely okay to miss you? This is a great question, Serena. It's okay that you're going to miss your children. But what I would say is, if you're kind of saying, oh, I'm going to really, really miss you, I can't wait till you come back, and that's all you're saying to them, what they are going to think is, oh my goodness, mummy's going to be on her own, or daddy, they're going to be on their own, what are they going to do? And I feel really, really guilty for going, so I'm not going to go and have a good time, or when I come back, I'm going to pretend I haven't had a good time. And that's a lot of pressure on children to feel that your happiness is in their hands, okay? So what I suggest a lot to my clients, Serena, in this is, of course you can say you're going to miss them, but what you also need to add into that conversation is what you are going to be up to when they are with their dad. So for instance, Serena, I would be encouraging you to be doing things, you know, building a life, obviously outside of your children and outside of your ex, so that when they're going, you might say, oh, do you know what, I'm going to really, really miss you when you've gone, but I'm seeing so-and-so, and we're going to the cinema, and I've got a meal planned tomorrow, and I'm going to go to the gym, and I've got some stuff to do around the house. So of course I'm going to miss you, but I'm going to be really, really busy, and you'll be back before we know it. By nature of you saying something like that, Serena, you are telling them that you're going to do stuff. You're not being on your own. You're not going to sit there and all cry or anything else like that. You know, even if you might be, but what you are saying to them is that it's okay. Go and enjoy being with your dad. I'm okay, and I've got stuff to be doing. If you just say you're going to miss them and nothing else, that's a lot of pressure. They're going to feel maybe guilty if they start to have a good time. They're going to not open up when they come back because they don't want to tell you, because they think you're going to get upset about it. And this for me, great question, Serena, it's probably one of the biggest things. You have to let your children know when they are not with you that you are okay, that you are not going to be this wreck or anything. However much you might be a little bit at the start, and I get that, but the more you can get your kids to know that you're working on yourself and you've got other stuff to do and everything like that, you are allowing your children to go and have a relationship with the other parent, which I know some of you might not want to happen, but you have to allow your children to do this. You have to allow them to go and try and at least have a relationship with the other parent, because all the research suggests that if we actively encourage that, it is better for the children. If your children feel like they are slap bang in the middle, you are setting your children up for a lot of heartache, potentially toxic relationships when they are older as well, because they will not forget it, because they will be creating belief systems around all of this going around them right now, you know, and these are the clients that I see right now who have been through stuff like this as a child. So you have this in your control to stop that. Okay, so great question, Serena. And then, of course, reassuring our children that it is absolutely not their fault. And obviously parental love is very, very different to mum and dad love with the children. So really understanding, and that goes for any age as well, you know, regardless, you know, a lot of obviously what I've spoken about tonight is very much about younger children, but absolutely older children as well. Check in with them, make sure they're okay about it, because it can be a really big shock when mum and dad, their anchors, their foundations are suddenly not together, you know, and it can be challenging. And you might have one parent, the narcissist, saying one thing and you know it was something else as well. Don't lie, but don't badmouth either. You know, get that balance right with that. Once you've nailed it, you'll be fine with it as well. And that's what I do. And the last one, show them. Show them what it is like. You be the role model. You be the mirror that they will look at to know how to deal with a narcissist. Seeing you happy will be the best way for you to empower your children. You will be the best parent by doing that. It isn't selfish. It's not selfish putting yourself first. It is survival. It is showing your children that self-love is the most important. Because if I said to you right now with how you feel, how would you feel if your children felt like this at your age? I know pretty much all of you will go, oh my goodness, no, I don't want them ever feeling like this, okay? But remember, we are in narcissistic relationships because we've had unhealed trauma ourselves that we need to heal. You can set your children up to break this cycle, and not only your children's children, but their children and their children. And you can really break this cycle of codependency, of narcissism. You can be the one right now to break that cycle, because practice self-love, lots of things that you can do obviously to do that. Create a new life, you know, process the upset, process the anger and sadness. These are natural parts of the grieving cycle when breaking up from a narcissist, or indeed anybody. And it's okay to feel like that. But you've got to work through your emotions. You carrying on feeling angry at your ex and it coming out onto your children is not healthy for your children. It isn't their fault. It isn't their fault that their parents have split up. It isn't their fault that one is a narcissist and the other one isn't. None of that is their fault. But the beauty of this is you now have in your hands how you can positively parent even if your ex is a narcissist. You've got the tools to do this, and it starts off with obviously parallel parenting. So I hope that's helped you this evening, giving you some, 7 top tips on how to positively parent with a narcissist. It's almost a kind of contradiction in terms. How do you positively parent with a narcissist? But you absolutely can. Can't control what they do, but you absolutely can control what you do. So again, if you're not in my private divorce and breakup support group on Facebook, then please do pop me a message. If you're watching this now back on YouTube, then please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my Heal and Thrive lives every single week coming through as well. Again, if you ever need to message me about anything, please do. I obviously do one-to-one coaching as well. So if anyone needs any further one-to-one help, obviously to really accelerate the healing process after narcissistic abuse, more than happy to have a chat. Please pop me a message, and I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic week, and I will see you again at the same time, 8 o'clock GMTV. I always say GMTV. Do you know what? I said that with a lady the other day as well. Because if you're watching from abroad, we used to have a breakfast show called GMTV, Good Morning Television. Anyway, 8 o'clock GMT next Sunday night at 8 o'clock, and I really look forward to seeing lots of you on the live next week as well. Take care.